Her name was Maria Alvarez, a woman the world passed by without a second glance. By day, she was invisible, scrubbing the floors of the powerful in the towering glass buildings of Los Angeles. By night, she whispered prayers into the silence, asking God for a life that didn't always hurt this much. Every polish of marble, every sweep of dust. She was building dreams that didn't belong to her, while burying the ones she once had. But fate has a strange way of watching the unnoticed. Because someone else had been watching too from the corner office on the 60th floor. Ethan Cole, billionaire, CEO, a man who had everything except peace. He saw her once, the quiet cleaner with tired eyes and gentle hands, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he couldn't look away. She wasn't chasing wealth. She wasn't seeking attention. She simply was. And somehow, that was everything he'd been missing. Their worlds were never meant to touch. But one rainy night, they did. And from that single moment, the man who thought he had it all met the woman who showed him what having everything truly meant. But every love that defies status comes with a price. When their secret surfaced, Maria became the target of humiliation and whispers, while Ethan faced a choice that would test the meaning of love itself, his empire or her heart. This isn't just a story about romance. It's about grace, destiny, and how the lowest moments of life can hide the seeds of our greatest transformation. Hi, my wonderful family. Before we dive into this emotional journey, I want to speak a prayer over you. May the seasons where you were unseen become the very doors God uses to reveal you. May your quiet sacrifices speak louder than any spotlight. And may every hidden tear water the soil of a future you can finally smile in. I'm your brother, Mr. Reality, and I'd love to know where you're watching from. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so this story of hope and resilience can reach more hearts like yours. Now, the full story. The city of Los Angeles woke beneath a bruised pink sky. From the glittering skyline to the sun-soaked streets, everything shimmered with possibility and pretense. Behind every tinted glass window was someone chasing a dream or hiding from one. Maria Alvarez moved quietly through the early morning streets, clutching her worn jacket as cold wind brushed through the palm trees lining Wilshire Boulevard. Her bus had broken down again, but that was nothing new. She had walked this route 100 times, each step driven by the same determination that kept her alive in a city that swallowed the weak. The sun was barely up when she reached the marble steps of Cole Enterprises, one of LA's most powerful corporate towers, 50 stories of glass, ambition, and silent battles. To most people, it was a monument of success. To Maria, it was the place that paid her rent. Her job wasn't glamorous. She wasn't part of the board meetings, the lavish lunches, or the champagne toasts celebrating million-dollar deals. She worked before dawn, sweeping through empty hallways, polishing glass doors, and removing the traces of yesterday's power. Maria had been cleaning this building for 2 years, and every single morning she saw him. Ethan Cole. He was everything this city worshipped: young, brilliant, and ruthless. The tabloids called him the king of commerce, the man who turned small tech dreams into billion-dollar empires. But what they didn't see, what Maria did, was the quiet sadness behind his eyes when he thought no one was looking. She first noticed it one night when she stayed late, cleaning the executive floor. Ethan had been there alone, standing by the window, his reflection blending with the city lights. His expression wasn't pride, it was emptiness. Since then, she found herself lingering near his office more than she should have. Not out of curiosity, out of connection. There was something about him that spoke to her spirit, a loneliness she understood all too well. That morning, the building was silent when she arrived. She took the elevator to the 48th floor, the top level reserved for Ethan and his closest executives. The doors opened to the familiar scent of leather and expensive coffee. She began her routine, dusting the sleek furniture, wiping the boardroom table, polishing the golden C logo engraved on the glass wall. When she entered Ethan's office, the first rays of sunlight poured through the panoramic windows, painting the floor in amber. She inhaled softly. His scent lingered, fresh cedar and citrus, subtle but commanding. On his desk sat a silver frame. Inside it, a photograph of a woman laughing under the California sunlight, catching her blonde hair. Ethan was beside her, smiling too. It was the only smile she had ever seen on him. Maria's chest tightened. She didn't know who the woman was, but the photograph carried a quiet ache. Then footsteps. She turned. Ethan stood at the doorway, his expression unreadable, his tie loose, as though the morning had already exhausted him. He wasn't supposed to be here this early. For a breath, neither spoke. The hum of the city below filled the silence between them. I'm sorry, Mr. Cole, Maria said quickly, lowering her eyes. I didn't realize you were in yet. He studied her for a moment. You're new. No, sir, 2 years now. His brows lifted slightly. 2 years, and he had never noticed her. Not once. That thought unsettled him. He nodded slowly. You keep this place spotless. Thank you. Maria's lips parted slightly in surprise. No one ever thanked her. It's just my job, sir. Still, he said softly, it matters. Most people don't see the quiet work that keeps things running. There was something genuine in his voice. Something warm. Maria smiled faintly, nodded, and turned back to her cleaning. But when she left his office that morning, her heart was no longer quiet. The following days carried a strange rhythm. Ethan began arriving earlier, sometimes just as Maria finished her shift, sometimes before. He'd find excuses to ask her questions, where the extra pens were kept, if the air conditioning felt too cold, how long she'd worked there. Small things, harmless things. But every word stretched into something deeper. He began noticing details. The way she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear when nervous, the way she hummed softly while cleaning, the way her presence made the room feel lighter. He didn't understand why he noticed. He only knew that her silence was the first peace he'd known in years. One afternoon, as Maria wiped the glass near the boardroom, 2 executives walked in, talking in hushed tones. Cole's losing focus, one whispered. Ever since Sophie left him, he's been half here, half gone. His ex-fiancée, the other replied. Didn't she marry that investor in San Francisco? Yeah, public humiliation. He never recovered. Maria froze. Sophie, the woman in the photograph. Suddenly, everything made sense. The distance in his eyes, the way he stood by the window as if waiting for a life that never came back. That night, as Maria walked home through the glowing streets of downtown LA, she prayed quietly for him. Not as a boss, as a man whose soul was still healing. Spring in Los Angeles painted the city gold. The jacarandas bloomed, sprinkling purple petals across Beverly Hills and Echo Park. But while the city celebrated, Maria's life remained simple. Still, she found herself smiling more often now. Ethan would greet her in the mornings, sometimes with a nod, sometimes with a small, almost hidden smile. She didn't dare to hope. But hope has a way of sneaking in like sunlight through cracked blinds. Late one evening, long after the last employees had gone home, Ethan found her in the lobby. She was mopping near the glass doors, earbuds in, softly humming to herself. "You're still here?" he asked, stepping closer. She startled, pulling out one earbud. "Oh, Mr. Cole, I was just finishing up." He hesitated. The city lights behind her reflected on the polished floor, turning the lobby into a soft, golden glow. "When it's just us," he said quietly, "you can call me Ethan." Her breath caught. "I couldn't." "You can," he said again, his voice gentle but firm. The moment hung between them, fragile, electric, forbidden. For the first time in years, Ethan Cole felt seen. For the first time in her life, Maria Alvarez felt noticed. But Los Angeles has sharp ears. And in a city built on whispers, rumors spread faster than truth. Their worlds were about to collide in ways neither could have imagined. And when love dares to bloom across class, pride, And pain, it never stays secret for long. The days grew longer in Los Angeles, and so did the silences between Ethan Cole and Maria Alvarez. They weren't uncomfortable silences. They were the kind that said more than words could ever manage. Every morning, when Maria arrived before sunrise, she found Ethan already there, standing by the window of his top-floor office, coffee in hand, the city spread beneath him like a living map. He always seemed lost in thought, but when she entered, his focus shifted. She tried not to look at him too long, but sometimes she did, and sometimes he caught her. He never said anything, only smiled faintly, as if they shared a secret the world wouldn't understand. One morning, Maria arrived early to find the lobby unexpectedly crowded. Executives in suits, assistants carrying binders, a sense of panic in the air. Something big was happening. "Board meeting," whispered Sandra, the receptionist. "Rumor is the company's losing a major investor." Maria nodded quietly, pushing her cart toward the elevator. But as the golden doors slid open, Ethan stepped out. His tie was loose, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. Yet, even weary, he radiated a kind of control that turned every head his way. Their eyes met for just a second, and in that second, his expression softened, the hard lines of stress easing, if only briefly. He didn't say a word, but that look lingered in her heart for hours after. By noon, the building quieted. The meeting had ended badly. Maria was wiping the glass near the conference room when she saw Ethan inside, alone, sitting at the long table, staring at a pile of papers as though they had betrayed him. She hesitated. She shouldn't interrupt, but something in her refused to walk away. She stepped inside softly. "Mr. Cole?" He didn't look up. "You can call me Ethan," he said, his voice low. "Ethan," she repeated gently. The name felt strange on her tongue, intimate, forbidden. "Are you okay?" He gave a dry laugh, no humor in it. "Do I look okay?" She smiled faintly. "Not really." That made him look up. And in that single glance, something inside him cracked the shell he had worn for years. "Everyone thinks I have everything," he said quietly. "Money, power, control. But sometimes it feels like none of it matters." Maria set her cleaning cloth aside and folded her hands. "Maybe it doesn't," she said softly. "Not if it costs you peace." Her words hit deeper than she realized. Ethan stared at her, this woman in a faded uniform, speaking with the kind of truth no one in his world dared to offer. He didn't know why, but her presence steadied him. She wasn't trying to impress him. She wasn't afraid of his silence. She just saw him. And in a world built on performance that was rare. Later that evening, Ethan sat in his penthouse, overlooking the glittering sprawl of downtown LA. The city hummed below cars like veins of light threading through the night. He sipped his whiskey, but it didn't calm him. His mind kept returning to her. Maria Alvarez, the cleaner who spoke like a poet without meaning to. The woman who had unknowingly disarmed him with gentleness. He told himself it was curiosity, but he knew better. He had felt something shift. The next morning, he arrived before sunrise again. She was there, mopping near the glass elevators, humming softly to herself. He stood watching her for a while before speaking. "You sing beautifully," he said. Maria startled, turning around quickly. I didn't know anyone was here." "You always say that," he replied, smiling for real this time. She blushed. "It helps me work, the humming." "What song was that?" She hesitated. "It's not really a song, just something my mother used to hum when she cleaned houses back home." He nodded slowly. "She sounds like a good woman." "She was," Maria whispered. "She taught me that dignity isn't about what job you do, but how you do it." Ethan looked at her, his chest tightening with something he hadn't felt in years, admiration. Real admiration. That afternoon, Maria went to the break room for water and overheard two assistants whispering. "Did you see how Mr. Cole looks at the cleaner?" one said, giggling. "The cleaner?" "Yes, the quiet one. He actually talks to her every morning." "No way. I swear, if Sophie hears about this, she'll explode." Maria froze. Sophie, that name again. She slipped out quietly before they saw her, heart pounding. She hadn't done anything wrong, but in a place like this, perception was dangerous. She couldn't afford to lose this job, not when Lila's hospital bills were due next week. That night, as she sat by her sister's bedside, she whispered to herself, "You have to be careful, Maria. Don't dream too high. That world isn't yours." But deep down, she already knew it was too late. Her heart had crossed the line. Ethan wasn't immune to the whispers either. Marcus Reed, his best friend and partner, confronted him one evening after work. "Ethan, people are talking," Marcus said, leaning against the desk, "about you and one of the cleaners." Ethan frowned. "People always talk. Not like this. You know how this city works. They'll twist it. They'll say you're losing focus." Ethan sighed. "She's just different. She doesn't want anything from me." "That's exactly why she's dangerous," Marcus replied. "Because she's the only one who could actually matter." Ethan looked out the window, unable to answer. The next morning, Ethan found Maria cleaning the large glass sculpture in the lobby. "Can I walk you home after your shift?" he asked softly. Maria froze mid-motion. "Why would you do that?" "Because I want to," he said simply. "Because I enjoy talking to you." She hesitated, her heart a battlefield of fear and longing. "People will talk. Let them," he said. "I'm tired of living for appearances." Her eyes glistened. "I can't lose this job, Ethan." "You won't," he promised. But promises, no matter how sincere, can't silence a city built on gossip. That evening, he walked her home anyway. They took the long way through quiet streets lined with jacarandas, the air warm with the smell of citrus and dusk. Maria lived in a small apartment above a laundromat in East LA. The neighborhood was simple but alive, children playing, music drifting from windows, laughter echoing against cracked walls. "It's not much," she said shyly as they reached her door. "It's real," he said softly. "That's more than I can say for most of my world." They stood there in silence, the air between them charged and fragile. "Thank you," she said, "for walking me home." He smiled. "Thank you for reminding me what kindness feels like." And before she could respond, he leaned forward, not close enough to touch, but close enough for her to feel his breath. "Good night, Maria." She closed the door slowly, leaning her forehead against it as her pulse raced. The following week, their unspoken bond grew stronger. Ethan started finding excuses to see her dropping by early, leaving late, offering her coffee, asking her opinion on simple things. To anyone else, it might have seemed innocent. To them, it was everything. But not everyone saw it that way. One Friday morning, Sophie Grant returned. The woman from the photograph, the fiancé who had left him for money and status elsewhere. Her heels clicked sharply across the marble floor as she entered the building, perfectly dressed, perfectly composed. When she walked into Ethan's office, the air turned colder. "Ethan," she said with that practiced smile, "it's been a long time." He leaned back, expression unreadable. 2 years. "Too long," she said softly. "I heard you've been distracted lately." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You always did love rumors." "I love you," she said, stepping closer. "Or maybe I just miss the version of you that remembered what power looked like." He laughed dryly. "I remember. You taught me what it costs." Sophie smiled thinly. "Then why do I hear whispers about a cleaner? Tell me it's not true, Ethan." He didn't answer, and that silence told her everything. Sophie's expression darkened. "Careful, darling. Los Angeles doesn't forgive fairy tales." That night, Maria received a call from her supervisor. "You're being reassigned, Maria," he said curtly. "Effective tomorrow. Another branch, Westwood." Her heart dropped. "Why? Did I do something wrong?" "It's not up to me," he said, his tone uneasy. "Orders came from higher up." She hung up slowly, her throat tightening. There was only one reason this was happening. Someone had found out. Ethan didn't know until the next morning. When he came in early, her floor was already being cleaned by someone else. "Where's Maria?" he asked sharply. "Transferred," the new cleaner replied. Westwood branch. He didn't even wait. He drove across town through rush-hour traffic, heart pounding, fury burning beneath his calm. When he reached the Westwood branch, Maria was there quietly sweeping near the lobby, pretending not to notice the stares from her co-workers. He walked straight to her. "Why didn't you tell me?" he demanded softly. She looked up, eyes wet. "Because there was nothing you could do." "I can do plenty," he said. "You think I'd let them?" "You can't fix everything, Ethan," she interrupted. "You shouldn't have to. Not for me." He stared at her, pain flickering in his eyes. "You think this is about charity?" "No," she whispered. "I think it's about something neither of us should feel." The silence between them was unbearable. Finally, she turned away. "Go home, Ethan, please." He didn't move. "If I go now, I may never see you again." Maria's voice trembled. "Then remember me as someone who cared enough to walk away." That night, Ethan sat alone in his penthouse, the city lights stretching endlessly beyond his windows, but they didn't shine the same way anymore. He poured himself another glass of whiskey but didn't drink it. His phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. "You can't fight both love and reputation, Ethan. You have to choose." He stared at the screen, then at the skyline. For the first time in his life, he didn't know which mattered more. Los Angeles glittered that night, but not for Ethan Cole. He sat by the vast window of his penthouse, a glass of untouched whiskey beside him, the city lights spilling through like broken stars. For years, those lights had symbolized victory. Tonight, they felt hollow. The woman he couldn't stop thinking about was somewhere across town alone, frightened, punished for nothing more than being seen by him. And for the first time, Ethan hated the empire he'd built. The next morning, he walked into Cole Enterprises with the sharp focus of a man on a mission. Heads turned, conversations stopped. Everyone sensed it, a storm was coming. He called for Marcus Reed. When his friend entered, Ethan didn't waste a second. "Who approved Maria Alvarez's transfer?" Marcus sighed. "Ethan." "Who?" Ethan repeated, his voice steady but dangerous. "HR acted on a directive," Marcus said cautiously, "but the pressure came from higher up. Sophie stirred the board, said your involvement with a cleaner might damage investor confidence." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Sophie doesn't control this company anymore." "She doesn't," Marcus replied quietly, "but she knows how to control perception. If this goes public, it won't just hurt you, it'll destroy Maria." Ethan's eyes hardened. "Then I'll make sure no one dares touch her again." That afternoon, he left the office without warning. No assistant, no driver. He took his own car, a silver Aston Martin, and drove through the heavy LA traffic toward Westwood. Maria was in the staff break room when he found her. The moment she saw him, her breath caught. "Ethan," she whispered, "you shouldn't be here." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You shouldn't have been moved." "I told you," she said softly. "You can't fix everything." He exhaled, eyes searching hers. "Maybe not everything, but I can fix this. You were punished because of me." Her voice trembled. "And if they fire me next, or worse, fire you?" Ethan smiled sadly. "They can't fire me, Maria." "Then they'll ruin you another way," she whispered. "You don't understand how people like them work. They don't destroy reputations with bullets, they do it with whispers." He paused. "Then let them whisper. I'm done living for people who measure worth in rumors." Her eyes glistened. "Ethan, please, you're making this harder." He reached into his jacket and handed her an envelope. Inside was a check enough to cover months of her sister's hospital bills. "I don't want your money," she said quickly, tears filling her eyes. "I know," he said softly. "That's why I'm giving it." She hesitated, torn between pride and gratitude. Finally, she took the envelope and whispered, "Thank you." He nodded once, then turned to leave. But at the door, he paused. "Maria, if you ever need me for anything, call." That night, Maria sat by Lila's hospital bed, the city lights flickering outside. Her sister slept peacefully, her small hand resting in Maria's. The check lay folded in Maria's bag, untouched. She couldn't bring herself to cash it, not yet. not while her heart felt heavier than her wallet. She whispered to herself, "Why does kindness hurt when it comes from the wrong direction?" But she knew the answer. Because love, when forbidden, feels like mercy disguised as pain. Days turned to weeks. Ethan tried to focus on work, meetings, mergers, endless reports, but nothing silenced the ache that had rooted itself deep in his chest. He told himself to forget her. But forgetting Maria Alvarez was like trying to unsee sunlight after you've been blind. Everywhere he went, her presence lingered, in the scent of lemon polish on his desk, in the soft hum of the janitorial carts at night, in the way silence suddenly felt too empty. One evening, as he left the building, he found Sophie waiting by his car. "You look tired," she said with a smirk. "Still playing savior to your cleaner?" Ethan's expression stayed calm. "Don't you have better things to do, Sophie?" "I told the board about her," she said, stepping closer. They were shocked, of course. The golden CEO of Coal Enterprises, entangled with an employee, it's deliciously scandalous. He clenched his jaw. "Stay out of my personal life." "Personal?" She laughed softly. "Everything about you is public. That's the price of power, darling." Her perfume filled the air, rich, suffocating. "You'll ruin yourself for a woman who doesn't belong in your world." He leaned in slightly. "Maybe that's why she's the only real thing in it." Sophie's smile faded. "You're going to regret this." The next morning, the headlines hit. Coal Enterprises CEO linked to company cleaner, internal investigation underway. It spread like wildfire across Los Angeles. Gossip blogs, business channels, even investors groups, all questioning Ethan's professionalism, his judgment, his future. Maria found out before Ethan did. She was mopping the lobby when her co-worker showed her the article on her phone. Her hands went cold. By noon, HR called her in. "Effective immediately," her supervisor said. "We're suspending you pending review." Maria felt her world collapse. She tried to speak, but no sound came. She packed her things in silence and walked out into the hot California sun. When Ethan stormed into the boardroom, Marcus was already there. "This wasn't me," Marcus said quickly. "The board called for an emergency session. Investors are panicking." Ethan slammed the newspaper onto the table. "Who leaked it?" No one answered. "Who?" he demanded again, voice sharp. One of the senior board members cleared his throat. "It doesn't matter who leaked it, Ethan. What matters is how we fix it. You need to release a statement, deny everything." Ethan laughed bitterly. "Deny that I care about her? Drown her reputation to save mine? Do you want to lose your company?" He stared at them, at their suits, their polished words, their hollow faces, and for the first time he saw them for what they were, men who would sacrifice souls for stock prices. "No," Ethan said finally. "I'll save my company my way." He walked out before anyone could stop him. That night, he found Maria sitting alone at Echo Park Lake. The city lights danced across the water, and her reflection looked as tired as his. "How did you find me?" she asked quietly. "I know where peace lives," he said softly. She laughed weakly. "There's no peace left for me. Everyone knows now. My landlord saw the news. My co-workers stopped replying. Even the hospital staff looked at me differently. I'll make it right." "How?" she asked, turning to face him. "You can't rewrite what people believe." He hesitated, then reached for her hand. "Then let's write something truer." Maria's eyes welled. "Ethan, this isn't a movie. You can't save me with a grand gesture." He smiled faintly. "Maybe not, but I can try anyway." The next morning, he called a press conference. Cameras flashed, reporters filled the hall. The entire city watched as the youngest billionaire in Los Angeles took the podium. He spoke clearly, his voice steady. "Rumors have spread about my relationship with an employee, Maria Alvarez. They're true. She worked hard, she lived quietly, and she reminded me what integrity looks like. I won't let anyone shame her for that." The crowd murmured, shocked. "I built this company on values," Ethan continued, "but somewhere along the line, I forgot that humanity is one of them. If my position is threatened because I care about someone beneath my rank, then perhaps it's not a position worth keeping." The reporters erupted in questions. Ethan stepped back from the mic. He had said enough. Maria watched the broadcast from her small apartment, tears streaming down her face. Her phone buzzed with messages, sympathy, shock, gossip, but she ignored them all. She turned off the TV, heart trembling with something she hadn't felt in a long time: pride. He had chosen truth, and truth in a city built on lies was the most romantic act of all. But not everyone admired his courage. By the next morning, Coal Enterprises stock had dropped 12%. Investors were withdrawing. The board was in chaos. Marcus called him urgently. "Ethan, they're demanding your resignation." Ethan exhaled. "Then give it to them." "You're serious?" "I am," he said quietly. "If protecting someone's dignity costs me a company, it's a price I'll pay." 3 days later, he stood outside Maria's apartment, dressed simply in jeans and a white shirt. No driver, no security, no empire behind him. When she opened the door, he simply said, "I'm free." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I resigned," he said. "Coal Enterprises is theirs now. Let them keep their gold tower. I'd rather build something honest." Tears filled her eyes. "You gave up everything?" He shook his head gently. "No, I finally stopped losing myself." Maria stepped closer, trembling. "Ethan, I never wanted you to do this for me." "I didn't," he said softly. "I did it for us." The silence between them was thick, sacred. The city outside kept buzzing, but inside that small apartment, time slowed. He reached for her hand. "Let me help you with Leela. Let me help you start over, not as your boss, just as a man who finally knows what love is." Maria closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You have no idea what you've done." He smiled faintly. "I think I finally do." And then, for the first time, she didn't pull away when he leaned in. Their lips met softly, uncertainly but real. Outside, Los Angeles shimmered beneath a golden sunset, a city that had taken everything from them and somehow given them back the one thing money could never buy: truth. The rain came softly that night, the kind that didn't chase people off the streets, just quieted the noise long enough for truth to be heard. Ethan stood at the small balcony of Maria's apartment, looking out at the drenched city. He had spent weeks there now, not as a billionaire, not as a CEO, but as a man rediscovering how to live. The days were humble. They cooked together. He helped Lila with her schoolwork. Maria worked part-time at a local care center, cleaning rooms and singing softly while patients slept. And yet, there was peace, a peace that his mansion, his cars, his boardrooms had never given him. But peace has a way of being tested when the past isn't finished speaking. One morning, Marcus appeared at the door. "Mind if I come in?" he asked. Ethan welcomed him inside, surprised to see his old friend in jeans instead of a suit. Marcus looked around. "So this is where you've been hiding?" "I wasn't hiding," Ethan said quietly. "I was healing." Marcus nodded. "I came because the board's falling apart without you. Investors are threatening to pull out. They realized you were the glue, not the problem." Ethan smiled faintly. "They'll manage." Marcus hesitated. "They won't, and neither will the company's charities. You remember the shelter project downtown? It's at risk of shutting down." Maria, who'd been listening from the kitchen, spoke up. "The shelter where you fund housing for the homeless?" Ethan turned to her, guilt shadowing his face. "Yes." She stepped closer. "Then you can't let it close. You didn't build that company just to walk away when people need it most." He met her eyes, the fire in hers reflecting the compassion he'd fallen for. "I'm not asking you to go back for them," she said softly. "Go back for what you built, for the good it can still do." The next week, Ethan returned to Coal Enterprises, not through the private elevator, but through the front lobby. Employees froze when they saw him. Gone was the immaculate billionaire. In his place stood a man in rolled-up sleeves and quiet purpose. He called for an all-staff meeting. "I don't want to be your CEO again," he said, "but I do want to be your conscience. We've built an empire on ambition, but without empathy. Ambition is just greed." He turned to the board members seated before him. "We've forgotten that success isn't measured by profit margins, it's measured by the people we lift." There was silence. And then, one by one, the employees began to applaud. By the end of the week, the board voted unanimously to reinstate Ethan, but under new terms. He would return as CEO with a restructured mission. Half of the company's profits would go towards social programs for low-income families and hospital aid, Maria's suggestion. The empire had been reborn. But power wasn't the same anymore. Ethan no longer felt chained to it. He spent his mornings at the office and his evenings helping Maria care for Lila. They walked hand in hand through Echo Park at sunset, the place where their hearts had once broken and begun to heal. "I never thought I'd see you in jeans," Maria teased one evening. He smiled. "I never thought I'd be this happy without a boardroom." She laughed softly. "You still talk like a CEO." "Maybe," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her face, "but only because I found my reason to lead again." Weeks later, as spring painted Los Angeles gold, Ethan took Maria on a drive up to the hills overlooking the city. The view stretched endlessly, towers, lights, and the sea in the distance. "I used to look at this skyline," he said quietly, "and see power. Now I see a million stories I never took time to understand. Yours changed mine." She smiled. "You make it sound like a fairy tale." He turned to her, eyes soft. "It is. I just didn't know I was waiting for the ending." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Maria gasped. Inside was a simple diamond ring, elegant, not extravagant. "Maria Alvarez," he said, voice trembling. "I've been many things in this city, a businessman, a success story, a headline, but for once, I just want to be a husband, yours." Tears filled her eyes. "Ethan," he took her hands, "I can't promise perfection, but I can promise honesty, patience, and the kind of love that grows even when the world turns its back." Maria's lips trembled as she whispered, "Yes." The city below seemed to hold its breath as he slipped the ring onto her finger. In that moment, wealth, power, and pride bowed before something greater: redemption. The wedding? It was small, intimate, and breathtakingly human. No tabloids, no luxury venue, just a quiet chapel in the hills, filled with soft music, flowers Maria picked herself, and people who had seen their journey from the start. Marcus stood as best man. Lila walked down the aisle as Maria's maid of honor, her smile radiant. And when Ethan looked at Maria in her simple white gown, he saw not a cleaner, not a symbol, but the woman who had washed away the dirt from his soul. As they exchanged vows, Ethan's voice broke slightly. "I once thought love was a distraction. Then I met the woman who taught me that love is the only thing worth building." Maria's eyes glistened. "I once thought love was for other people. Then I met the man who made me believe I was worthy of it." When the priest declared them husband and wife, applause filled the chapel, not the loud, hollow kind, but the kind born of witnessing something pure. Years later, the Cole Foundation became one of Los Angeles's most impactful charities. Hospitals received funding, children from low-income families got scholarships. Maria became a board member not by privilege, but by purpose. Their love, once whispered about in scandal, became a story told in gratitude. And every year, on the anniversary of their wedding, Ethan and Maria returned to Echo Park. They'd sit by the lake, the same spot where he'd once found her crying, and watch the sunset together. One evening, as the sky turned gold, Maria leaned her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever miss your old life?" she asked. He smiled, watching the light dance across the water. "No, that life was made of shadows. This one's all light." She closed her eyes and whispered, "From shadows to vows." He kissed her hand, his voice tender. "And from vows to forever." The city lights blinked below them. The same city that had once tried to break them now stood as a witness to their love, rebuilt from pain, polished by truth, and sealed in grace. Because sometimes the most beautiful love stories don't begin with wealth. They begin with humility, courage, and the faith to see beauty where others see nothing. Stay tuned to Mr. Reality Stories for more beautiful life real stories. Subscribe and share so that all hearts in the world would hear of the beautiful stories I tell. Thank you. See you in our next story.